Welcome to What's That Pen? Helping you find your next perfect pen. And today we are looking at this set from Marvy. It is the Plume 2. Now, I have a love affair with Marvy for their fabric markers, but never have I ever used their actual markers. Now, these show that they are to be used on stamps, but they are also a double-ended brush-based tip marker, and you know that we can't resist a single thing that says brush tip. However, if you saw my video with the stinkers that I got on Amazon, please keep in mind that Marvy also has a brush marker that is a lie. It is not actually a brush marker. The Plume 2 is the one that has the brush tip that is flexible. So if you are looking at these ones, make sure that you're getting the Plume 2 with the flexible tip. These come in 108 vivid colors, which is very exciting because you know we like to collect things. Most of the packs are 12 packs, and for this 12 pack it was just over $15, which is approximately $1.30 per pen. So it's not too bad, not breaking the bank too much. This is a double-ended marker. It has a brush tip and then an extra fine tip. Now, this extra fine tip is extra fine. It is teeny tiny baby, so it's good for detail work. Now, this being something that is often used with scrapbooking or stamps or card making, it's also acid-free. And finally, we found one that's acid-free and says it. That will make sure that it lasts for a long time and doesn't discolor the paper. But it also explains why we then have an extra fine tip, because most likely if you are stamping on the front, you're going to want to write the message with a matching color, and an extra fine tip will do the job. These markers are also water-based, though they say that they're vivid dye-based. They still have water combined with the dye inside the pen. The other option would be to have alcohol inside with the dye. So even though it says vivid dye-based, it still has a water base to that dye. One other thing that I want to point out, and it's quite the claim that they make, I'm not sure what study they did, but it says that it's America's favorite double-ended brush marker. So like, I have seriously high hopes for these pens. Let's dive in and see how they do. Now, apparently, this case doesn't actually want me to get in here. And one thing that is a bit of a downer is that once you open the case, the pens just fall everywhere. They don't sit nicely in the case. The case doesn't stay open. So this is not a case that you would be using long term. Instead, you would need to use other storage for these pens, most likely, unless you plan on driving yourself crazy with this case every time, which I don't. Now we're looking at these pens today because Sophia requested on one of my other videos that we take a look at these ones, and I'm so glad that she did, because I'm not gonna lie, the first letter that I did with these pens, I felt like maybe they were my pen soulmate. They are a brush nib, and I was so nervous when I opened these and saw how long the tip of these brushes are. Usually when a brush tip is that long, you don't have great control over it. It's going to be floppy because of that length. It's like the difference between a short ponytail or a long ponytail. Woo! So I assume these would be long ponytail brushes, but they are a brush nib that has incredible resistance to pressure. So you can still get your brush lettering, but it's not a floppy ponytail. It has very thin upstrokes and relatively thick downstrokes, but not as thick as you would assume from the size of the tip. But that being said, it's quite consistent over the downstrokes and the upstrokes. Your thick line, like I mentioned, is not as thick as I had suspected, but it's still relatively thick. And the thin line is very thin. So with this being still relatively thick and this being very thin, you can get incredible contrast between your thick and your thins with these pens. Let's look at Nib Rebound. So going up and down, and I can feel the flex happening at the very end of the pen, but even right after, it looks like it is straight again. So this is above average or average rebound. I would say above. What am I? Just being one of those naysayers who calls everything 3 out of 5 stars. But the fact that I could feel the flex happening and then it was mostly straight afterwards is a huge plus. Remember though, as you're doing your lettering, you always want to be turning your pen a little bit after every stroke or two when you take a break, because that'll help keep your pen into a more controlled position. It's like if the wind is always pushing you this way, you'll start to grow that way. So make sure that the wind comes from both directions. Not humans. Humans won't start to grow that way. But for instance, if you were like a tree or a flower or something, then you'd get pushed over. All right, the ink quality, it is pretty good. You can see the streaks from stroke to stroke, but the colors are still quite saturated on the page. They're bright and vibrant. Dare I say vivid, like the pack was suggesting. So let's try some of these other markers as well. Now, even though the marker tip is very long, these have a medium to large writing size. They are not nearly as big as the Tombow dual brush markers, which means that you can use them for a piece that you want to do that would be on one piece of paper, or even something that would be an 8x10. Now, I found that the rigidity of the pen while I was writing out the name was really nice because it allows you to get flourishes that aren't floppy. You have so much control over those upstrokes because you can feel every little bit of it on the page. That means that your upstrokes are going to be more consistent than if it's a pen that has flex at the very tip of the pen, and many of them do. Many pens, especially the large barrel pens, have more resistance when you're trying to get those thick lines and then less resistance when you're trying to get the thin lines, and really it should be the other way around. In a perfect world, you would only have a little bit of flex in that very tip of your pen to be able to get clean upstrokes, and that's what this pen gives you. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this pen. I felt like when I was using it to write, my writing was beautiful, whereas some other pens, especially the larger pens, your writing can feel frustrating because those upstrokes and the transitions are not as clean as you would like. I don't know if you can tell that I already might be in love with these pens, and I've only used them a little bit. Let's see how juicy they are. Coloring in our cup and smearing. I really thought there would be a smear. There's no smear at all. So they dry pretty quickly on the page. I would say that they're more of a dry regular, and I'm also saying dry because you can still see the streaks. Usually by the time you go over a second time, you can't see the streaks in your cup anymore. It looks like more of a solid color, but that's why I say that it's more of a dry color, whereas a thicker dye-based color would probably cover a little bit better. However, if you are using this for lettering, you don't need to worry about those streaks. It would just be if you're using this for coloring that the streaks might be something that would drive you a little bit bonkers. And the moment of truth, let's look at the ease of transition. So light pressure, heavy pressure, light pressure, and going the other direction. Those transitions were so simple. The upstrokes look consistent at the beginning of the stroke and after the stroke on that recovery from downstroke to upstroke. And it's also pretty smooth on the inside. Of course, these are a little small scale for the size of the writing that you would do with these pens, which makes it always a little bit more difficult, but going pretty fast. Still, the transitions were really, really simple. So I would say that this is hands down a yay for transitions. I don't know if you can already tell where I'm going with this pen review, but I am actually really glad that I spent the $15.80 that I did on these pens. It's a sort of an average price point for a pen, I would say, and I would be frustrated spending $1.30 if they weren't a good pen, but the fact that, first of all, they made me feel like my writing was beautiful, and it's not because of my writing. It will help you get those crisp, clean upstrokes easy transitions, and ensure that you have beautiful colors for your piece. All of those to me are huge pros. There was absolutely no smear with the smear test, which makes these a good option then for lefties as well, or just someone who, has a tendency to smear their work. The contrast between thick and thin though, the way that it was so easy to get a nice controlled thin line while still feeling the pen on the page, being a little bit heavy-handed, this is an absolute dream. If you feel like your upstrokes get smushy, if you feel like they aren't well controlled, having a pen that has that resistance even on your upstrokes is exactly what you need. And to top it all off, they're also acid-free. The potential cons of these pens are that if you are using them for coloring, you are going to see some of your streaks. So that is something that might get your goat a little bit, but if you are using them for lettering, I would say that these, maybe the first time I'm saying this, well, no, there are a few others that I love, but these ones I am so excited to have in my collection. So thank you, Sophia. Now I might need to get all 108 colors, hopefully not, but they are ones that I will definitely be pulling out. They are going to make demonstrations so easy. They're going to make final pieces so easy. They are going to make me feel like my lettering is beautiful. And what is more perfect than a pen that makes your lettering feel like something beautiful you are creating? If you have a pen that you would like me to test out, and hopefully it's another one of these dream pens that I never even would have bought for myself, but now I have them. If you have one you want to see tested, just put it in the comments down below and I will make sure that I get to it. And make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss a single pen review. Otherwise, you might miss out on pens that I would say are quite possibly the perfect pen, like this one, which I never would have thought to buy, and now I might need to buy more of. I hope that you find your own perfect pen through this series as well.